Chapter 1, 1982, the National Aerospace Research Institute. Miss Armstrong, have you thought this through? Joining the Northwest Aerospace Program means you could be cut off from the outside world for 5, 10, or even decades. It's equivalent to dedicating your entire life to the nation. Stella Armstrong nodded firmly. My lifelong dream has been to contribute to our nation's progress. And you're fine with never leaving the base for the rest of your life? Stella smiled faintly. If our predecessors could do it, so can I in times of peace. Someone must still bear the weight. Hearing this, the two review officers' eyes welled up with tears as they shook her hand, moved. Excellent, excellent. Our base needs people with your kind of unwavering determination. Miss Armstrong, welcome to the aerospace program. We'll send a car to pick you up in 2 weeks. By the way, your file indicates you have a husband and a son. They must be very dependent on you. Please make sure to comfort them and prepare them during this time. The words husband and son made Stella hesitate for a moment, but then she shook her head. That won't be necessary. My husband and I never officially registered our marriage, so leaving will be simple. Besides, I decided a while ago that I don't want either my husband or my son anymore. Without regard for the stunned looks from everyone, she turned and walked out of the institute. She was the only military wife on the base who hadn't registered her marriage. On the day they were supposed to sign the papers, a letter arrived from overseas for Ethan Vance from the woman he loved. The man, who rarely showed his emotions, was overcome with joy and rushed out of the marriage registry, leaving her behind. They never got the certificate that day. Although Ethan held a wedding ceremony with her later, he never brought up the subject of making it official again. Stella didn't mind, because she hadn't married Ethan for love, but to repay a debt of gratitude. This was her secret alone. 5 years ago, she was a researcher at the Aerospace Institute, spending her days at the base under her mentor's guidance, dedicated to developing advanced aerospace technology that would make the world recognize their nation's manufacturing prowess. Until one day, as she and her mentor were walking, a truck lost control and hurtled toward them. Her mentor shoved her out of the way without hesitation, but she herself was thrown over 30 feet. Covered in blood and barely breathing, her mentor grasped her hand. Stella, in my life, I have been true to my country and my organization. My only regret is my son. Years ago, his father and I divorced and abandoned him. Recently, his girlfriend also left him and went abroad. I've been watching him from afar these past few days, and he's a wreck. Stella, I'm begging you, give him a home. The son her mentor spoke of was the youngest and most promising regiment commander in the military region, the handsome Ethan Vance. Her mentor passed away that day. Stella kowtowed 3 times before her body. The next day, to repay the debt, she began to purposefully get close to Ethan. She succeeded in winning him over, married him, managed his household, and eventually gave him a son. She had fulfilled her mentor's dying wish, giving the adrift Ethan Vance a home. Until the 5th year of their marriage, when the ex-girlfriend who had abandoned Ethan, Rhiannon Moon, returned. From that day on, everything changed. Ethan began staying out late, meeting with Rhiannon frequently. Even the son she had carried for 10 months grew attached to Rhiannon, saying he wanted Rhiannon to be his mother. The hearts of both father and son gradually drifted to Rhiannon Moon. Since they both preferred to form a family with Rhiannon, she was willing to let them. Her debt was paid. It was time to resume her own dream. Her stage was never meant to be confined to a kitchen, but to be up in the sky at this thought. A smile of liberation appeared on Stella's face, and she quickened her pace toward home. But as soon as she entered the military compound and pushed open the door, she saw Rhiannon Moon sitting on the sofa. Before she could speak, Ethan emerged carrying a plate of washed fruit, placing it on the table in front of Rhiannon as he explained. Rhiannon's apartment has some issues, so she'll be staying with us for a while. The tone was not up for discussion. It was less of an explanation and more of a notification. Their son, Evan Vance, also ran over, wrapping his small arms protectively around Rhiannon as if afraid Stella might cause trouble. Mom, don't be so petty. It's just for a little while, what's the big deal? I love playing with Auntie Rhiannon. She understands me so much better than you do. Stella looked down and smiled faintly. Fine, I agree. She was leaving in 2 weeks anyway. Rhiannon would become the lady of this house eventually. What was the point in disagreeing if she was just moving in a little early? Chapter 2. Hearing Stella agree, Ethan's hand, which was peeling an orange, suddenly froze. He glanced at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Even Evan hadn't expected her to agree so easily and stared blankly for a moment. It was Rhiannon who stood up, feigning embarrassment. "This doesn't feel right. Maybe I should just stay at a guest house." Evan grew anxious, forgetting Stella's unusual behavior. He quickly tugged on Rhiannon's sleeve, whining. "No, Auntie Rhiannon, please stay. I want you to tell me stories." Ethan also motioned for her to sit back down, handing her the peeled orange. "The guest houses aren't safe. Just stay here." Rhiannon accepted the orange, the tips of her ears turning slightly red as she glanced at Stella. "I feel so bad about this. Ethan, that you can let bygones be bygones is already more than I could ask for. I never thought you'd let me move in. You've helped me so much. How can I ever repay you?" Listening to this, Stella smirked internally. This wasn't gratitude. Rhiannon was clearly flaunting the special relationship she once had with Ethan, showing off her unique place in his heart. However, she was showing off to the wrong person. Stella hadn't cared before, and now that she was about to leave, she cared even less. The next morning, as Stella was drifting between sleep and wakefulness, she heard a knock on the door downstairs. Just as she was about to get up, Ethan, who was beside her, rose first and went downstairs. Soon, she heard the front door open, and a middle-aged woman's voice faintly reached her ears. "Excuse me, is this Captain Vance's home?" Hearing this, Stella quickly got up, threw on a robe, and left the room. As she reached the top of the stairs, she saw Ethan standing at the door with his back to her, his voice as cold as the early winter wind. "Yes. Who are you?" The woman didn't seem to mind, simply smiling. "I'm the housekeeper the missus hired to clean and cook." Stella hurried down the stairs and welcomed the woman in. "Ma'am, please come in." As she led the woman inside, Ethan turned to look at her, his brow furrowed with a hint of displeasure. "Didn't I tell you I don't like strangers in the house?" Stella froze for a moment, then looked up at him. Yes, because he didn't like strangers, because he was a neat freak, because their son was a picky eater. For those reasons, she had quit her job, abandoned her dreams, and given up everything to become a housewife for the past 5 years, doing everything herself. But it wasn't because she loved him so much. It was to repay his mother for saving her life. Now that the debt was paid, there was no need to continue playing the role of a housewife. She gathered her thoughts and said coolly, "I have things to do lately and won't have time for housework. You'll have to make do." What things could she possibly have to do? Ethan's brow furrowed deeper. Just as he was about to press her, Rhiannon suddenly emerged from her room. "Ethan, you're up so early. Could you take me for a walk? I haven't had a chance to properly explore the city since I got back." He snapped back to the present, his gaze softening as he looked at her. "After we finish breakfast, I'll take you." The new housekeeper was efficient and quickly served a variety of breakfast dishes. But both Ethan and Evan frowned, tasting only a single bite before pushing their plates away. The old Stella would have noticed their displeasure immediately, rushed to the kitchen to remake a few dishes, and coaxed them to eat a little more, warning them it was bad for their stomachs. But today, she simply focused on her own breakfast, not even sparing them a glance. It was Rhiannon who looked at the father and son with some surprise. "Today's breakfast is quite good. Are you not satisfied?" Evan poked at a bun in his bowl before dropping his chopsticks and complaining, "It's not half as good as what Mom makes." Rhiannon's eyes flickered. "Your mom is that good of a cook. Well, then I'll have to learn from her sometime, so I can cook for you and your dad in the future, okay?" Stella's hand, holding a bun, paused. She glanced casually at her son and saw him clapping his hands happily. "Yay, yay, Auntie Rhiannon is the best at everything." Her thumb gently rubbed the metal side of her chopsticks, a self-mocking curve forming on her lips. She had carried him for 10 months and raised him meticulously for 5 years, yet her son had never offered her a single word of praise. He was just like his father. Their hearts were impossible to warm. After finishing her breakfast, she picked up her bowl and chopsticks and headed to the kitchen. As she left, she heard Rhiannon's cheerful voice. "Don't say that. Auntie Rhiannon is just a beginner. I definitely can't compare to your mom. When I make something, you'd better not dislike it." "How could I? Don't worry, Auntie Rhiannon. Even if Mom's cooking is delicious, in my heart, it can't compare to what you make for me." "Because you're my favorite." Chapter 3. Stella's expression remained unchanged as she turned and went into her room. She rummaged through her bookshelf for a moment before pulling out a thick notebook. Carrying it, she walked out and knocked on Rhiannon's door. Rhiannon was selecting a silk scarf to wear for her outing and was surprised to see Stella standing there, holding out a notebook. Rhiannon frowned. "What is this?" Stella smiled faintly. "Didn't you say you wanted to learn to cook? This is my recipe book. It has detailed records of all their favorite dishes as well as their dietary restrictions. From now on, all of this would be Rhiannon's responsibility." Hearing this, Rhiannon's expression stiffened. She had just been making casual conversation. Her hands had never touched raw meat or vegetables. Why would she do such things? Just as she was about to refuse, she saw Ethan coming down the stairs. She quickly forced a polite smile. "Well, thank you. I'll be sure to study it carefully." "What are you two doing?" Ethan's voice came from behind them. Rhiannon quickly said in a soft tone, "I was just saying I wanted to cook for you and Evan, so I was asking Stella for your favorite recipes." Ethan frowned. "That's just talk to humor a child. You were raised in comfort. You don't need to do such rough work." At his words, Rhiannon lowered her eyes, which immediately reddened. "Ethan, this is something I want to do. I did those things that wronged you in the past, so I've always wanted to make it up to you." Although she didn't say it outright, everyone knew she was referring to the time when they were about to get married, and she had abandoned him without a word to go abroad. The memory made Ethan's tall frame tense up, as if he recalled those sleepless nights spent drowning his sorrows in alcohol. His voice was low. "It's all in the past." After a pause, he added, "Besides, I never blamed you." Listening to them pour their hearts out, Stella curled her lip. Unable to stand it any longer, she thrust the book into Rhiannon's hands. "I have to run to the department store. You two take your time. I'll be going now." But before she could leave, Rhiannon grabbed her arm. "Stella, I was just thinking of going to the department store, too. Let's go together." In the end, Stella was forced to go with them. The department store was bustling with people. Ethan and Evan flanked Rhiannon, one on each side, carefully helping her pick out various items. From a distance, they looked like a perfect family. Stella averted her gaze and walked toward the bookstore, where she selected several books on aerospace. As she was paying, Ethan noticed the books in her hand and frowned. "Why are you suddenly interested in aerospace?" Suddenly interested? She had only resigned 6 months after marrying him. Before that, she went to the Aerospace Institute every day, and he had even given her a ride a few times. Had he forgotten, or had he never cared? It made sense. She had pursued him so easily back then, he probably only had 2 thoughts. 1, to use another woman to forget Rhiannon, and 2, since he couldn't marry the woman he wanted, it didn't matter who he married. And she had happened to walk right into it. She gave a slight, bitter smile but didn't explain. Just felt like reading up on it. Ethan frowned, feeling that something was off, but he didn't press further. He reached out to take her books and place them on the counter, pulling out his wallet. But Stella quickly pulled the books back, her expression placid. "No, thank you. I'll get it myself." With that, she took out some bills, paid for the books, and walked out holding them. Ethan's outstretched hand was left hanging in the air. His eyes darkened as he watched her retreating back, a deep sense of unease creeping into his heart. In his memory, Stella had never treated him so coldly. She had always followed him with enthusiasm, her eyes perpetually filled with love whenever she looked at him. But since yesterday, from unhesitatingly letting Rhiannon move in, to hiring a housekeeper, to paying for her own books, all these strange behaviors seemed like a deliberate effort to draw a line between them. A wave of panic hit him, and he was about to chase after her when he bumped into a familiar face. "Captain Vance, what a coincidence. I was just looking for you." A gruff voice pulled Ethan from his daze. He looked up to see a comrade in arms walking toward him respectfully. He composed himself. "What is it?" The comrade pulled a few tickets from his pocket. "The troop subsidies came in. This month's subsidy is 3 tickets to a stage play. You can take your wife and son to see it." Ethan looked at the 3 tickets for Les Miserables in his hand and suddenly remembered Stella mentioning she wanted to see this play not long ago. He was about to hand the tickets to her when Rhiannon caught up from behind. Seeing the tickets, she gasped with delight. "It's Les Miserables. I've been wanting to see it for so long but could never get tickets. Ethan, I really want to go. Can you take me with you?" As soon as she finished, Evan ran over and pleaded in his childish voice. "Mom, since Auntie Rhiannon wants to go so badly, Why don't you give her your ticket? I've never been to a play with Auntie Rhiannon before. You can go with me and Dad next time. Seeing the pleading look in her child's eyes, Stella just smiled. There would be no next time. She was going to the Northwest. She would never have the chance to see it again. Ethan didn't speak, but his expression was clearly hesitant. Understanding the choice of the father and son, Stella smiled faintly. In that case, you three should go. I have something else to do, so I'll head back first. Without waiting for their reactions, she hugged her books and walked away. Chapter 4. Late at night, Stella sat on the sofa, intently reading the books she had bought, making notes with a pen. The wall clock ticked on, 1 hour after another. It wasn't until the clock struck 11 that the front door was pushed open from the outside. Ethan walked in, carrying shopping bags and supporting Rhiannon. Evan was clinging to her neck, excitedly recounting the day's fun, while the two adults chimed in occasionally. They looked as warm and happy as a family. Stella closed her book and stood up. "You're back. Did you have a good time today?" Her sudden voice broke the cozy atmosphere. The three of them instinctively looked over at her. Perhaps not expecting Stella to still be awake, Ethan froze for a second, his expression a little unnatural. Evan, however, scampered down from Rhiannon's arms and ran to her excitedly. "Mom, we had so much fun today," Stella nodded faintly. "That's good." Ethan glanced at his watch and then placed the shopping bags on the sofa. "I have some matters to attend to at the base, so I'm leaving now. You get some rest." The last sentence was clearly directed at Rhiannon. Since he had returned, his entire focus had been on her. He hadn't spared Stella a single glance. Whether it was out of guilt or something else, Stella didn't care. She simply instructed the housekeeper to take the child for a bath. Then she started to head upstairs. Stella Armstrong, as soon as Ethan left, Rhiannon dropped her pretense. Stella looked at her, confused, and saw her holding up the shopping bags, her eyes filled with triumph and provocation. "Do you know why we came back so late? After the play, we went to the city's finest restaurant for dinner. Ethan got a call about a mission, but he patiently waited for me to finish eating and made sure I was home safely before he left. And that son of yours, he's so obedient. He was putting food on my plate and carrying my things the whole time. He was just short of calling me Mom." As if afraid Stella couldn't see clearly, Rhiannon deliberately walked closer, pulling out the things Ethan had bought for her one by one, complaining as she did so. "Look at all this stuff. Ethan bought it all for me. It's so expensive I told him not to, but he wouldn't listen. He said it looked good on me and insisted on buying it." Then, as if remembering something, Rhiannon covered her mouth, her eyes mocking. "Oh dear, I hope you're not angry that I'm telling you this." She looked Stella up and down. "You've been married to Ethan for so many years. Has he ever bought you anything?" Had he? Stella's thoughts drifted. In their 5 years of marriage, Ethan had bought her things. Clothes, jewelry, shoes. But his mind had been on Rhiannon, and he had bought everything in Rhiannon's size. Nothing had ever fit her. Now that his true love had returned and she was about to leave, he no longer needed to use her as a substitute for his longing. "Ma'am, the child's bath is done." The housekeeper's voice pulled her back to the present. Stella acknowledged with a hum and was about to take Evan back to his room when Rhiannon walked over, crouched in front of Evan, and affectionately nuzzled his cheek. "Evan, do you want Mommy to tell you a bedtime story tonight, or should Auntie Rhiannon do it?" Evan giggled from the tickling but still wrapped his arms around her neck and said in his sweet voice, "I want Auntie Rhiannon to tell me." Rhiannon shot a triumphant look at Stella and carried the child upstairs. Stella gave a self-deprecating smile, picked up her book, and went back to her room. But before she could even sit down, a scream came from Evan's room. "Oh my God, someone help!" Stella rushed into her son's room and saw Evan lying unconscious on the floor, his rolled-up sleeve revealing a dense rash of red hives. Beside him, a frantic Rhiannon was clutching half a peanut candy. Stella's pupils contracted. She lunged forward and grabbed Rhiannon's wrist. "You gave him peanuts? Didn't you know he's allergic to peanuts? It was written in the recipe book I gave you today," yelled it like this. A flash of guilt crossed Rhiannon's eyes, but she still lifted her chin defiantly. "That recipe book of yours is so thick, who has time to read it?" A surge of fury ignited in Stella's chest. She had no time to argue with Rhiannon. She quickly scooped up her son and rushed out. At the hospital. After 2 hours of emergency treatment, the light above the operating room finally went out. The doctor removed his mask and walked toward Stella, his voice filled with relief. "It's a good thing you brought him in time. Any later and the boy would have been gone. He's out of danger now." Stella's tightly clenched hands finally relaxed, and she sank weakly onto a chair. Soon, Ethan heard the news and rushed over. He burst into the hospital room, terrified. After confirming that his son was truly out of danger, he stood up straight and turned to demand, "How did he suddenly have an allergic reaction?" Before Stella could speak, Rhiannon started crying. "Ethan, it was Stella. She must have been angry that you gave me the ticket today. The moment she got home, she took it out on the child, forcing him to eat peanut candy. I tried my best to stop her, but she pushed me away. If she was angry, she could have just said so, and I wouldn't have gone to the play. But no matter what, she shouldn't have taken her anger out on a child." Listening to Rhiannon's twisted accusation, Stella's eyes widened. She had always lived her life with a clear conscience and had never imagined someone could be so morally bankrupt. To make a mistake and not admit it, to lie and shift the blame, and yet, Ethan actually believed such a ridiculous lie. He slowly turned to look at her, his eyes simmering with growing anger. Stella suppressed the turmoil churning inside her. "Rhiannon Moon, do you dare to repeat what you just said in front of the child?" Rhiannon's face paled, but she feigned firmness. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Suddenly, a moan came from the hospital bed. "Daddy?" Ethan quickly picked up the child from the bed and soothed him gently before asking patiently, "Sweetheart, tell Daddy who gave you the peanut candy." Evan struggled to open his eyes. He looked around the room, and the moment he saw Stella, he burst into tears. "Mommy, it was Mommy." Chapter 5, a buzzing sound filled Stella's ears, and she couldn't hear anything else. She struggled to steady her staggering body. "Evan Vance, say it one more time. Who gave you the peanut candy?" Seeing her like this, Evan instinctively shrank back, his tears flowing even more fiercely. "Auntie Rhiannon. I want Auntie Rhiannon." Rhiannon rushed over and sheltered him in her arms. "Don't be afraid, Auntie Rhiannon is here. Your father will get justice for you." Her son was hiding in the arms of his attacker, claiming to be afraid of his own mother who had rushed him to the hospital. This was the son she had carried for 10 months, the son she had raised for 5 years. Just as she was about to question him further, Ethan grabbed her arm, his clear voice tight with suppressed rage. "That's enough, Stella Armstrong. Even a tiger won't eat its own cub. Over such a small matter, you tried to kill your own son. I see now you are truly unfit to be a mother. Get out of here now. From this day forward, you are not to come near this child without my permission." Looking at the father and son, Stella felt a ringing in her ears, and her eyes grew colder with disappointment. Finally, she let out a light, broken laugh. "Fine, I'll go, not just this time." For the rest of her life, she would stay far, far away. Seeing her expression, a faint pang of pain pricked Ethan's heart. In their 5 years of marriage, Stella had always been calm in his presence. She rarely lost control like this. But the memory of his son's pale face made the anger in his chest almost burst. He pushed her straight out the door, then walked back into the room, slamming the door shut in her face. Stella clenched her fists, didn't spare the room another glance, and walked out of the hospital, step by step, without ever looking back. For several days, Stella holed up at home. She didn't go to the hospital once, nor did she ask about Evan's condition, as if his life or death no longer concerned her. Until one day, the home phone rang. As soon as Stella picked it up, she heard Ethan's cold voice. "The boy wants to eat your cooking. He's been refusing to eat for the past few days. Make some of his favorite dishes and bring them to the hospital later." Stella found it laughable. "Didn't you tell me not to see our son?" Ethan paused on the other end, his voice tinged with displeasure. "Did you take me literally? Can't you try to make amends? Stella, didn't you used to love this child so much? You would panic if he got even a small scratch. Now his life was on the line, and you don't even bother to check on him. How can you be so heartless?" She gave a self-mocking laugh. Was she the heartless one, or were they? Her voice remained flat. "I'm busy. Since he likes Rhiannon so much, let her take care of him." Without waiting for a response, she slammed the phone down. She didn't see the child again until Ethan brought him home. That evening, Evan timidly knocked on her bedroom door. The moment Stella opened it, she saw the child holding a gift, his eyes red-rimmed. "Mommy, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to frame you last time. It's just, Auntie Rhiannon is very fragile, and I was afraid Daddy would scold her. I said it was you who gave me the peanut candy to protect her. I'm sorry, I'll never lie again. She looked at the child before her with cold indifference, laughing bitterly inside. This was the child she had carried for 10 months, yet he had framed her like this for a woman he had known for less than half a year. Her voice was colder than ever before. I don't need your apology. Evan panicked instantly, tears welling in his eyes. Mommy, won't you forgive me? In the past, no matter what I did wrong, you always forgave me. The only answer he received was the sound of the door closing. Chapter 6. As soon as Ethan got upstairs, he saw his son standing pitifully at the door, holding a gift. He quickly walked over and knelt down, stroking the boy's head. Aren't you still recovering? Why are you standing here? Hearing his father's words, Evan's small mouth turned down, and he threw himself into Ethan's arms, sobbing. Daddy, Mommy won't talk to me, so I wanted to buy her a gift to make her happy, but she kicked me out. Ethan's arm around the child stiffened, and he gave the closed door a deep look. Don't worry about your mother. She loves you so much, she'll come around in a little while. He was so certain. After all, Stella was known in the compound for being gentle and virtuous. No matter what the father and son did, she never got angry. After hearing Ethan's words, the child nodded in agreement and stopped dwelling on the fact that Stella was ignoring him. Seeing his son's mood improve, Ethan took a few days off and took him and Rian out to have fun everywhere. They always returned with bags full of shopping. Stella didn't even glance at them. She was busy having farewell dinners with her friends. After a few drinks, her friends looked at her with emotion. Stella, you were once the most hardworking and talented person in our institute, with the grandest dreams. It was a shame you suddenly got married and had a child, getting trapped in domestic life. We were so worried about you. Thankfully, you've finally come to your senses. Stella finished the last sip of tea in her cup and smiled lightly. Yes, my life was derailed for 5 years. Now, it's finally getting back on track. Under the starry sky, Stella sat on a bus, watching the fleeting night scenery outside the window, her mind filled with 1,000 thoughts. For 5 years, to repay a debt, she had lost her dreams, her freedom, and herself. Now, counting the days, she was about to leave. She was finally going to live the life she wanted. Late at night, she pushed open the gate to the family courtyard and was surprised to see a light on inside. Looking in, she saw Ethan standing by the landline, on the phone. She was about to turn away when she heard the voice from the receiver. Excuse me, is this Comrade Stella Armstrong? The special transport will depart in 7 days. Are you ready? Ethan frowned. Depart for what? Ah, you must be Comrade Lynn's husband. You don't know, Comrade Lynn. Before the person could finish, Stella rushed over and snatched the phone. I'm ready. I can leave at any time. After hanging up, Stella finally breathed a sigh of relief, only to meet his deep, searching eyes. Leave, where are you going? Her expression didn't change as she said softly, It's nothing. I scheduled a physical exam in the city center. It's in 7 days. Why, do you want to come with me? Fortunately, Ethan didn't seem to suspect anything. He said coolly, I don't have time. Stella hummed in response, said nothing, and went upstairs. She then came back down carrying a quilt. Ethan's expression changed, and he grabbed her wrist. What are you doing? Stella said calmly, You all have been out having fun these past few days and coming back too late. It's disturbing my rest. I want to move to the guest room. Ethan's brow furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line. What do you mean, disturbing your rest? We asked you to come with us, but you refused. Are you still angry about what happened last time? Seeing her look down without a word, he became more certain of his assumption, his deep voice tinged with displeasure. It was a small thing. You were the one who was wrong, and I've already forgiven you. Why are you holding on to it? Can you stop making a scene? Stella laughed and shook off his hand. Think whatever you want. He stood there, his face clouded with anger, his dark eyes staring at the closed door of the guest room. He'd just see how long she could keep this tantrum up. Chapter 7. For the next few days, Stella shut herself in her room, avoiding any contact with them, until a friend from the base was getting married and invited them both to the wedding. When Stella had changed and was ready to leave, she saw not only Ethan at the door but also a dazzlingly dressed Rhiannon. She froze for a moment. Before she could speak, Rhiannon walked up, linked her arm with hers, and said with a beaming smile, I haven't been to a wedding since I came back. I'd love to go and see what it's like. You don't mind, do you, Stella? The invitation clearly stated to, please bring your spouse. For Ethan to blatantly bring Rhiannon along was tantamount to trampling her dignity underfoot. The gossip that would spread through the family compound and the base afterward was unimaginable. Ethan seemed to understand what she was thinking and was about to speak, but Stella simply shifted her gaze away coolly. "Miss Moon, please be my guest." With that, she shook off Rhiannon's hand and got directly into the car. Throughout the wedding, Rhiannon stuck to Ethan like glue, and Ethan, in turn, was exceptionally attentive to her. He would serve her soup, peel shrimp for her, or hand her a napkin, leaving Stella, his actual wife, neglected in a corner. The looks from countless people in the compound changed, but Stella remained unfazed, quietly eating her meal until she heard Rhiannon's coquettish voice. "Ethan, I can't finish my soup, but I'm afraid people will say I'm being wasteful." Ethan said softly, "Give it to me." Rhiannon was about to pour it for him, but in the next second he took her bowl directly and drank from it. She trembled in shock, the tips of her ears turning red. "Ethan, isn't this a little inappropriate?" But Ethan didn't seem to care. "It's not like I haven't eaten your leftovers before." Hearing this, Rhiannon froze for a moment, then her eyes immediately reddened, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, you used to be like this. But that was in the past. Now you belong to someone else, and I'm all alone. Perhaps this is heaven's punishment for abandoning you back then." Ethan was taken aback and was about to respond when the host's voice boomed from the stage. "Everyone, come and catch the bouquet. Those who are single will find true love, and those in a relationship will have a long and happy life together." At these words, guests rose and crowded toward the stage. Stella looked up and saw that Ethan, who never participated in such festivities, had also stood up. The military wives in the compound finally felt a sense of vindication and quickly grabbed Stella's hand. "Stella, look, your Captain Vance is up there." Captain Vance may seem reserved, but his actions speak volumes. "Stella, it looks like he wants to grow old with you." Quick, go." Captain Vance caught the bouquet. Stella looked up and saw that Ethan had indeed caught the flowers. He was walking toward her with a smile on his face, like an iceberg melting in an instant. That smile made her feel a momentary daze. She had never seen Ethan smile like that. But it also snapped her back to reality. For all these years, the person who could elicit such a smile from him was never her. Sure enough, the next moment, he walked past her and, in front of everyone, unhesitatingly handed the bouquet to Rhiannon, who was standing right beside her. In that instant, time stood still. Ethan, however, was oblivious. He looked at the moved, red-eyed Rhiannon before him and said softly, "Rhiannon, for the rest of your life, you will be happy forever." The people around them couldn't bear to watch any longer and looked at Stella with sympathy. But they saw her watching the scene without a ripple of emotion, her eyes showing no sadness, no pain, only peace. Because only she knew that Ethan's words would soon come true. Soon, she would return him to Rhiannon for good. Everyone would return to their own paths. Chapter 8. 2 days before she was set to leave, Ethan knocked on the guest room door for the first time. Stella opened it, her tone flat. "Is there something you need?" Seeing her calm demeanor, the words he had rehearsed for so long got stuck in his throat. At the wedding, he had caught the bouquet and publicly given it to Rhiannon. Afterward, everyone said he had humiliated Stella, and only then did he belatedly realize his mistake. At the time, he had only seen Rhiannon crying and had desperately wanted to comfort her. But a day or two had passed, and Stella had never once questioned him about it. She seemed to have reverted to her old self, tolerant of everything. The only change was that her eyes no longer held him. Though life went on as usual, he felt a persistent unease, a sense that something was about to spin completely out of control. "If there's nothing else, I'm going to rest." As she started to close the door, he quickly reached out and stopped her. "Tomorrow is your birthday. My son and I will be back on time for dinner." Hearing this, a flicker of surprise crossed Stella's eyes. A couple of days ago, Rhiannon's house had been fixed, so she had moved out of the compound. From that day on, Ethan and Evan often stayed out all night. That's why Stella was so surprised when he said he would be home for dinner tomorrow. But it was good that he was coming back. Tomorrow was the day she would officially leave, and she wanted to use this opportunity to make everything clear to Ethan. She would tell him that to her, he was just an object of gratitude, that there was no love involved. Now that his first love had returned and she had fulfilled her duty, they owed each other nothing. As for their child, since he liked Rhiannon so much and wanted her to be his mother, she would give him to them as well. So she nodded. All right, I'll be waiting. On the evening of her departure, the moon outside was exceptionally full. Remembering yesterday's promise, Stella cooked a full table of dishes, planning to have a farewell dinner with the father and son. But she waited for an hour, then another for a total of 5 hours, and they still hadn't returned. Suddenly, the landline in the living room rang. She had an idea of what was coming. When she picked it up, Ethan's voice came through the line. Perhaps because he was standing her up, his usually cold tone held a rare hint of apology. Stella, there are fireworks by the river tonight. Rhiannon said she wanted to see them. Evan and I were worried she'd be unsafe alone, so we're going with her. We can't be there for your birthday today. We'll make it up to you next time, okay? Evan's childish voice chimed in from the background. Anyway, Mom has a birthday every year. It doesn't matter if we miss one. We can celebrate with her next year. Daddy, let's go. Auntie Rhiannon is calling for us then. Perhaps Evan snatched the phone because the line quickly went dead. Stella wasn't surprised. There was no sadness on her face, only a sense of release. She sat back down at the dining table, looked at the cake with its lit candles, and closed her eyes to make a wish. I wish for the prosperity of our nation. I wish for the happiness and well-being of the people. I wish for Stella Armstrong to develop more advanced aerospace technology and make the world see what our country can create. Every word had nothing to do with the father and son anymore. The moment she blew out the candles, the sound of a car horn came from outside. A smile touched her lips. She knew the car to take her to the base had arrived. Stella stood up, packed her luggage with the utmost speed, and then, carrying her suitcase, walked out without a single look back. Under the vast night sky, the team leader took her luggage and shook her hand solemnly. Comrade Stella Armstrong, congratulations on joining our aerospace base. Stella shook his hand with equal gravity. It's an honor to join. For the rest of my life, for my country, as she sat in the car and it pulled away, Stella took one last look at the home where she had lived for 5 years and smiled faintly. Ethan Vance, Evan Vance, goodbye forever. Chapter 9. Elsewhere, a sharp pain suddenly shot through Ethan's heart. He clutched his chest as his heart began to pound faster and faster, as if something precious was slipping away from him. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. He had told Stella he wouldn't be coming home before, but every time she would just nod and say okay. But this time, she had hung up without a word, as if nothing he or Evan did mattered to her anymore. Then his eyelid began to twitch violently, and a sense of foreboding washed over him. Evan, standing beside him, grew impatient. Daddy, why aren't you moving? Auntie Rhiannon has called for us several times. The fireworks are about to start. Ethan finally snapped back to reality and saw Rhiannon looking at them worriedly from the doorway. She was particularly stunning tonight, wearing light makeup. Yet, for some reason, his mind conjured an image of someone else. In 5 years of marriage, he seemed to have never seen Stella wear makeup. Why did he suddenly think that the makeup-free Stella was more beautiful than the dolled-up Rhiannon? Suddenly, Rhiannon's face was right in front of him, bringing him back to his senses. What's wrong? Rhiannon bit her lip. The main event tonight wasn't the fireworks, but what came after. For this night, she had spent a fortune on an imported red dress and had applied her makeup meticulously. In the past, seeing her dressed like this, Ethan's eyes would have lit up with admiration as he complimented her beauty. But tonight, something was off. He just kept staring blankly at the phone, not responding no matter how many times she called his name. This made her worry. Would her plan for tonight even succeed? Rhiannon looked up at him, a smile on her lips. Ethan, the fireworks are about to start. Let's go. Without waiting for his answer, she took his hand to lead him outside. Normally, Ethan would have gone along with her, but now his mind was consumed by that abruptly ended phone call with Stella. He pulled his hand away, his face full of apology. Rhiannon, I'm sorry, I don't think I can go. I have things to take care of at home. At his words, Rhiannon's eyes instantly reddened. But you promised you'd be with me. What could possibly be so important at home? Besides, you used to stay out all the time, and I never saw Stella get angry, did I? Yeah, Daddy, Evan chimed in. Mommy never gets angry over little things like this, and you said you'd celebrate her birthday with her next time. And didn't you promise to take me out for a treat after the fireworks? Ethan then remembered that it was true. Stella was famously good-tempered. In the past 5 years, he had missed important dates with her before, but she had never once been angry. Besides, he had made it clear on the phone that he would definitely be home to celebrate her birthday next time. Seeing him hesitate, Rhiannon linked her arm with his again and smiled sweetly. Even if Stella is angry, you can just buy her a birthday present later to make it up to her. Come on, the fireworks are about to start. Ethan didn't question it further and left with Rhiannon. The sky exploded with fireworks, drawing crowds of onlookers to a standstill. The cheers of children and Rhiannon's gasps of delight filled the air, but Ethan's mind drifted far away. He realized he had never properly watched fireworks with Stella. Every time, he had left for one reason or another. Her face would show a flicker of disappointment, but she would quickly hide it, thoughtfully telling him to leave early and to drive safely. She wasn't like Rhiannon, who would first look disappointed, then angry, whenever he had to refuse her for unavoidable reasons, forcing him to be the one to appease her. Ethan came back to himself and looked at Rhiannon beside him. For some reason, Stella's face appeared before his eyes. Perhaps he was too lost in thought because he was still standing there, stunned, long after the fireworks had ended. Rhiannon turned around and saw him staring straight at her. This made her blush. She had been nervous when he initially said he wouldn't come to the fireworks, thinking her plan for the night was ruined. But now, seeing him look at her like this, she grew bolder and more impatient. She wanted to proceed with her plan now. So, after Ethan had put the child to sleep, Rhiannon pushed open his hotel room door. Under her coat, she wore only a thin nightgown. Just as she was about to speak, his body tensed, and he quickly walked over and pulled her coat closed. "Ethan!" Rhiannon's flushed face instantly turned pale. This was a rejection, wasn't it? Why? Chapter 10, Rhiannon had made flirtatious advances before, and each time he had enjoyed them, even coming close to kissing her once. So why, when it came to the final step, would he refuse to touch her? Ethan pulled his hand back, his face full of hesitation. He had always known he couldn't forget Rhiannon. When his parents divorced and abandoned him, she had been the one to pull him out of his despair. He had thought she was his only hope and had imagined a future together. But he never expected that Rhiannon would eventually abandon him for her career. Over the past 5 years, his heart had, at times, leaned towards Stella. But the moment Rhiannon returned, he had thrown everything aside. For Rhiannon, he was willing to abandon everything, even his wife of 5 years. He knew Rhiannon still had feelings for him, as he did for her, so he had fully accepted her flirtatious overtures. But when it came to this moment, he hesitated, his mind filled with images of Stella. Remembering Stella's increasingly distant expression, thinking of that abruptly ended phone call today, his calmed heart began to race with panic again. He looked at Rhiannon apologetically. "Rhiannon, we can't do this. I'm married. Let's just stop here for tonight. Stella is waiting for me at home. I have to take the boy back now. I'll have someone see you home." Without waiting for her reaction, he scooped up the sleeping Evan and walked out. Watching his hurried departure, Rhiannon's heartbroken expression twisted into one of resentment and bitterness. Why was it Stella Armstrong again if she hadn't had to leave back then? The position of Mrs. Vance would never have belonged to Stella late at night. The door to the Vance home opened. Ethan walked in, carrying a drowsy Evan. He subconsciously called out Stella's name, only to be frozen in place by the scene before him. Except for the housekeeper, the house was empty, and the entire living room felt much more barren. He thought Stella was asleep and was about to go up to the guest room to find her, but the housekeeper's words nailed him to the spot. "Captain, the missus, she's gone." Like a bolt from the blue, Ethan stood frozen in place, stunned for a long time before he looked at the housekeeper in disbelief. "Who did you say is gone?" He stared at the housekeeper, his eyes as dark as ink, a barely visible flame flickering within them. Gone? How could Stella be gone? He had told her to get lost before, but every time she had clung to him, refusing to leave. She must be gone now because he didn't celebrate her birthday with her, throwing a tantrum. No, Stella had a good temperament, she wouldn't throw a tantrum. She was probably still in her room. If she was really angry, he would just have to coax her. With this thought, he turned his gaze away and continued up the stairs, reminding the housekeeper as he went. "Don't make jokes like that again." Captain, I'm not joking, the missus was really picked up by someone. The next second, Ethan threw open the guest room door. It was completely empty. He rushed back to the master bedroom with the child in his arms, but it too was empty. Daddy. All the jostling woke Evan, who rubbed his eyes sleepily. Go back to sleep. He quickly put the child back on the bed. Once the boy was asleep again, he quietly closed the door and went back downstairs. The housekeeper was still standing there. Seeing him come down, she let out a long sigh. She had worked as a housekeeper in many homes and had seen all sorts of couples, but she had never seen a pair as estranged as Stella and Ethan, where the husband brought another woman home. The housekeeper opened her mouth, her words filled with indignation for Stella. The missus was very decisive when she left. She threw away everything that belonged to her, as if she never planned on coming back. Chapter 11, Never Coming Back. Ethan felt as if something had violently struck his heart, and his breathing stopped completely. The housekeeper's words echoed in his mind. Stella was never coming back. How could that be? She loved him so much, and they weren't divorced yet. He hadn't signed any divorce papers. That's right, he and Stella were still husband and wife. She couldn't possibly leave him. At this thought, Ethan rushed to the study to find their marriage certificate. But no matter how he searched, he couldn't find it. His large hand gripped the edge of a drawer, the knuckles turning white from the force. Why couldn't he find the marriage certificate? Had Stella taken it to file for divorce? No, theirs was a military marriage. If Stella really wanted a divorce, the organization would have already summoned him for a talk. But he hadn't received any call from the organization. Thinking of this, he picked up the phone and dialed the City Hall marriage registry. Marriage certificate? But Captain Vance, our records show that you and comrade Stella Armstrong never registered your marriage. How am I supposed to find a certificate for you? Hello? Captain, are you still there? After a long daze, Ethan finally came to his senses. It's nothing, thank you. He slammed the phone back onto its cradle and staggered onto a nearby sofa, his mind replaying the words from the registry. He and Stella were not registered, but he had gone to the registry with Stella. He suddenly remembered that, as he was about to sign, he received a package from Rian that required his personal signature. At that moment, his mind was completely filled with Rian, and he hadn't thought about anything else. He gave a bitter laugh and covered his face. Suddenly, the phone rang again. He hesitated for a moment before picking it up. Rian's crying voice came from the other end. Ethan, I sprained my ankle, it hurts so much. Can you come and see me? Ethan didn't answer. Rian had often used this trick to lure him over in the past. Back then, his heart was full of her, so he never exposed her little schemes. Now, his mind was consumed with the fact that he and Stella were not married. He had no desire to see Rian, so he rejected her invitation with a few brief words. Without waiting for her to react, he hung up the phone. The next morning, Ethan woke up groggily on the sofa to the sound of his son's faint crying. He quickly opened the bedroom door and saw his son nestled in the housekeeper's arms, crying for his mother. Although Evan had spent a lot of time at Rian's house with him over the past 6 months, when something was wrong, he still instinctively wanted Stella. Perhaps because he hadn't slept well, Evan had nightmares all night and had called for his mother, but no one had come to comfort him. Seeing Ethan walk over to hold him, he buried himself in his father's arms, whimpering pitifully. Daddy, I want Mommy. But no matter how much I called, no one answered. Daddy, do you know where Mommy went? By the end, he was wailing. Ethan's heart ached, but he didn't know what to say. He bit his lip and gently soothed the child in his arms. Mommy had to go out for something important. She'll be back soon. But he didn't know when she would be back either. Evan's tears finally stopped and he choked out, Then, when will Mommy be back? The words caught in Ethan's throat. He didn't know how to answer. This hesitation made Evan start crying again. Is it because I made Mommy angry last time, and she still hasn't forgiven me, so she's not coming back? I was just so scared that you would be angry at Auntie Rian, that's why I said it was Mommy who gave me the peanut candy. Before he could finish, Ethan cut him off abruptly. Who did you say gave you the peanut candy? Chapter 12, On the way to Rian's house, Ethan drove at breakneck speed. His eyes were hard and cold, like a winter wind, chilling to the bone. He never would have imagined that the peanut candy that had nearly killed his son was something Rian had forced the child to eat. The boy had tried to resist, but Rhiannon had shoved the candy into his mouth. He knew Rhiannon's true character and that she liked to play pranks, but he had never thought she would go so far as to try to kill his own child. If Stella hadn't reacted so quickly, his son would have been dead. Remembering the things he had said to Stella at the time, a wave of guilt washed over him. How could a mother frame her own child? But he had been so consumed by anger at the time that he hadn't listened to her explanation. He couldn't imagine how heartbroken she must have been. At this thought, he pressed the accelerator even harder. At the Moon residence, the servants were used to seeing Ethan's car. They simply greeted him briefly and continued with their work. Ethan pushed open the main door and walked familiarly toward Rhiannon's room. Just as he was about to open the door, he heard the sound of a phone call from inside. "Mom, don't worry, I'm destined to be Mrs. Vance." Ethan's hand, poised to knock, froze in mid-air as he heard Rhiannon continue to boast smugly inside. "It's just two men, how could I not handle them? The little one, I forced him to eat peanut candy and made him point the finger at Stella, and he did it obediently. As for the big one, I don't even need to do anything. He loves me so much that even after I abandoned him, he still comes running whenever I call. It's just a shame about that kid, he's a bit of a nuisance. I'll deal with him after I marry Ethan." With a loud bang, the door was violently kicked open by Ethan, causing Rhiannon to whip her head around, her voice cracking into a shriek. When she saw it was him, her terror quickly turned to delight. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" The rest of her words caught in her throat. The man before her was radiating fury, stalking towards her with his dark eyes fixed on her. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. With every step he took, the grip tightened, until he was standing right in front of her, and his hand shot out, closing around her throat. "You tried to kill my son?" With a crash of thunder, a bolt of lightning lit up the sky outside, illuminating Rhiannon's ghastly white face. Her mind went blank, and she let out a shattered, trembling scream. I don't know what you're talking about." The next second, Ethan threw her to the floor. The man knelt down, grabbing her chin and forcing her to look at him. "You knew my son was allergic to peanut candy, yet you forced him to eat it and then made him blame it on my wife Rhiannon Moon. You're looking for death." With each word Ethan spoke, his tone grew heavier, until the last sentence became a furious roar. Rhiannon had lost all her former arrogance. She cowered in a trembling heap, terrified tears streaming from her eyes. "No, it's not like that. Ethan, listen to me, let me explain," she cried, grabbing his hand, her eyes filled with terror and pleading. "I never wanted to harm your child. I just wanted to get rid of Stella. If she was gone, we could be together again. As for the boy, I never meant to harm him," she explained frantically, her small face streaked with tears, a sight that might have elicited pity from an outsider. But Ethan was unmoved. The tears that once would have pained him now only made him more irritated. He and Rhiannon had been childhood friends for over a decade. Pampered by her parents, she had developed a spoiled and arrogant nature, often lashing out at the servants. In recent years, because she had abandoned him and then wanted to reconcile, she had been forced to humble herself and act meekly in his presence. But his endless indulgence had only nourished her long-standing arrogance, leading her to frame his son just to drive Stella away. Remembering his son's pale face in the hospital and Stella's helpless, crying form, the fire in his chest blazed higher. He yanked his hand away and stood up. "Save your explanations for the police." "No, please don't." No matter how much Rhiannon cried and begged, Ethan didn't look back once. He had more important things to do now. Chapter 13, 1 call, 2 calls, 3 calls. Countless phone calls were made, but everyone he contacted said they hadn't seen a trace of Stella. Ethan slammed the phone down in frustration. The city was only so big, where could a woman with no parents and no job possibly go? Suddenly, the phone rang. He quickly picked it up and heard a deep voice on the other end. It was his superior. "Ethan, I hear you're looking for Comrade Stella Armstrong. Take my advice and stop looking. She belongs to the country now." Before he could react, the line went dead. Belongs to the country? That meant Stella had dedicated herself to the nation, joining a classified unit. Did that mean he would never see her again for the rest of his life? His breath caught, and he gripped the phone tightly. Just then, the housekeeper rushed over. "Captain, you should go outside and see. There are some people here to see you." Ethan, preoccupied, walked out of the villa and saw several people carrying boxes. They placed them in front of him. "Excuse me, are you Comrade Stella Armstrong's husband, Ethan Vance?" He was taken aback but nodded. "Yes, who are you?" The person in the lead smiled. "It's like this. Years ago, your mother saved Comrade Stella Armstrong's life. To fulfill your mother's dying wish, Comrade Armstrong married you out of gratitude. However, your mother felt deeply guilty, believing that a life saved shouldn't be used to ruin someone's happiness. So, before she passed, she had someone write a letter. With this letter, Comrade Armstrong could divorce you at any time." Ethan couldn't hear the rest of the words clearly. He dazedly accepted the letter and dazedly carried the boxes back into the villa. He opened all the boxes and found they were filled with books about aerospace. Ethan picked up the books one by one, looked at them for a long time, then put them back in the boxes before finally opening the letter. He hadn't seen his parents since their divorce, and out of resentment, he had even used the excuse of being busy at the base to skip his mother's funeral. Only now did he realize how guilty his mother had felt towards him, so much so that she had risked her life to save Stella, all to give him a home. But in the end, his mother had regretted it and come to her senses, writing this letter to grant Stella her freedom. Due to various reasons, the letter had only reached him 5 years later. The further he read, the more his hands trembled. No wonder Stella had never thought of leaving, no matter how he treated her at the beginning. It turned out her kindness towards him was all to repay a debt. Perhaps she had developed feelings for him over those 5 years, but he hadn't cherished them, giving his love back to Rhiannon instead. That's why she had been so heartbroken, so quick to dedicate herself to the country without hesitation. He had truly failed her. "Daddy, why are you crying?" His son's innocent voice pulled him from his thoughts. Ethan came to his senses, quickly put away the letter, wiped his tears, and looked at his son, who was hugging a pillow. "It's so late, why aren't you asleep?" At this, Evan suddenly started crying again, full of grievance. "I had a nightmare and I'm scared. I want Mommy. Daddy, you said Mommy would be back soon. Why haven't I seen her?" Ethan's heart clenched. He quickly pulled his son into his arms and soothed him, but his eyes were filled with pain. Where could he possibly find Stella? In the windswept region of the Northwest. Barren and harsh were Stella's first impressions when she arrived at the aerospace base, but she paid it no mind, immersing herself completely in her research. For 2 full years, she and her colleagues worked tirelessly, and their research finally achieved a major breakthrough. Chapter 14. To celebrate, the base organized a social mixer. Stella wiped the dust from her face before returning to her room. The room was small, containing only a bed, a table, a lamp, and a wooden chest. She bent down, pulled the chest out from under the bed, and took out a dress, her eyes filled with nostalgia. Since arriving at the base, she had packed all her clothes away in the chest and wore only her research uniform day in and day out. The last time she had worn a dress was last year when she went with a colleague to the town to buy necessities. Although the base was remote, countless scientists had come from all over the country, bringing their families with them. Gradually, a small town had formed about 2 miles from the base, the only place they could buy daily necessities. This mixer was being held in the town square. She closed the chest, pushed it back under the bed, poured some warm water from a nearby thermos, gave herself a quick wipe down, and then changed into the dress and went out. A colleague was already waiting for her outside. Seeing her come out, she quickly linked arms with her, chattering excitedly about the party. "Stella, you've been at the base for 2 years. Haven't you ever thought about settling down? If you got married, you could move into the town. You could go home every day, and the conditions are better than at the base. At least you'd have running water every day." Stella just smiled. "I don't really have any plans for that. Right now, I'm completely focused on my research." The two of them chatted as they walked and boarded the twice-daily bus to the town. The scenery outside the window gradually receded. Soon, the barren desert landscape turned green, and finally, both sides of the road were lined with lush poplar trees. Stella knew they had arrived in town. As soon as she got off the bus, a familiar male voice called from across the way. "Stella." Stella looked up and saw Jasper Knight standing opposite, smiling and waving at her. Her colleague beside her playfully nudged her toward him. Stella sighed inwardly but still walked over to him, smiling and greeting him. "What are you doing here so early?" Jasper smiled. "The team leader asked us to come early to light the bonfires for the barbecue tonight." When Stella first arrived, meat and vegetables were extremely scarce. Later, the townspeople started raising sheep and growing vegetables, becoming self-sufficient. Today, to celebrate the research breakthrough, they had made an exception and slaughtered several extra sheep, stewing large pots of lamb soup. As they ate barbecue and drank soup, the party reached its main event, inviting someone you liked to dance. The town and the base combined had only about 300 people, and there weren't many single men and women. Plus, some people would be spending their entire lives at the base. So, at every mixer, the single people were especially proactive. As soon as the town mayor announced the start of the dance, many young men and women stood up, holding a flower, and began searching for the person they liked. The sound of an accordion filled the air, and soon, couples were dancing around the bonfire. Only a few people remained seated, including Stella. Wendy Yates, who had just finished a dance, sat down beside her after a few words with her partner and nudged her. "Why don't you go dance? I see that Jasper over there has been staring at you this whole time. He's turned down several girls just to dance with you." Stella looked over and happened to see Jasper politely declining another girl's invitation. She quickly looked away and shook her head. "Forget it. You know my situation. Why should I drag someone else down?" When she first arrived, Jasper had fallen for her at first sight and began pursuing her. Even after she told him she had been married and had a child, he never backed down. He said he didn't mind any of that and that he wasn't in a hurry for an answer. They could start as friends, and they had been friends for 2 full years now. Chapter 15, before Wendy could say more, a shadow fell over them. She immediately stood up and went to find her dance partner. Stella looked up to see Jasper extending a hand to her. "Would you like to dance?" She instinctively wanted to refuse, but then he said, "Just think of it as a friendship dance." After one dance, Stella refused to dance anymore. "I think I've been sitting in the lab for too long. My body is a bit stiff, and my bones are starting to ache." Jasper didn't press her further, simply walking with her to the edge of the square. "It's getting late. Are you heading back to the base, or are you staying in town for the night?" Stella looked up at the vast, starry sky and smiled. "Back to the base. The weather is nice tonight. I can watch the stars." The last bus back to the base had already left. In the end, Jasper gave her a ride back on his bicycle. They talked a lot along the way, but they both tactfully avoided the topic of feelings. Just as Stella was about to go back to her room, Jasper suddenly called out to her. "Stella, do you remember what I told you 2 years ago?" Stella paused and turned to look at him, her eyes filled with confusion. She saw Jasper walk toward her and pull a necklace from his pocket. "I fell for you the first moment I saw you. I know your situation, but I am very clear that I love you for who you are, not for anything else. For 2 years, my feelings for you have never wavered. Are you willing to give me a chance?" His eyes were full of sincerity and love, which warmed Stella's heart. She had never seen such intense love and sincerity in anyone's eyes, not even during the years when Ethan had supposedly settled down for her. His eyes had never held much love. In her first year at the base, she had thrown herself entirely into her research, never thinking she would meet and fall in love with someone again. Although her marriage to Ethan had started as a repayment of a debt, she had invested her true feelings. But that sincerity was shattered the moment his childhood sweetheart returned, and her son followed him to find that woman. It wasn't that she didn't want to love again, it was that she was unwilling, but Jasper was different. In the past 2 years, he had helped her more than anyone else. When she was in danger, he was the first to rush to her rescue. At first, she was grateful, but after 2 years, she had opened her heart again. "I like you too, but I'm not sure if my feelings will last. You know, my last relationship wasn't great, and I can't guarantee they won't come looking for me. Or if they do show up, will it cause trouble for you?" Before Stella could finish, Jasper pulled her into his arms. "I know, but I don't care. If we're together, we'll be husband and wife, a family. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. We're family, we don't need to be formal. Stella, before getting together with you, I've already thought about the worst-case scenarios and how to deal with them. No matter what happens in the future, I will not hurt you or abandon you." The stars were exceptionally bright tonight. Under the night sky, Stella blinked and realized her face was wet with tears. Perhaps because they knew each other so well, they quickly wrote their marriage application and submitted it to the organization. The director was thrilled about this new couple and immediately stamped their application. Even as she held the marriage certificate and the key to their new home, it still felt unreal to Stella. It wasn't until she was sitting on the sofa in their new home that she finally came back to her senses, watching the man diligently cleaning the house. Jasper swept the floor while talking to her. "You sit here and have some pastries to tide you over. Once I'm done here, I'll go to the butcher shop to buy some meat and come back to make lamb dumplings." Whatever he said, Stella just nodded in agreement. When he finished cleaning and sat down beside her, she poured him a glass of warm water to soothe his throat. "I'm sorry you have to go through this. When things settle down here, I'll give you a grand wedding." Chapter 16. Jasper hugged her, his heart aching for her. The base was in a remote location, and the small town had only one simple photo studio, let alone any professional wedding photography studios. Coupled with their work commitments and simple tastes, their wedding consisted of nothing more than getting the license, taking a photo, and handing out candies. But Stella shook her head, smiling freely. "It's fine. I think this is perfect. As long as we can live a good life together, that's more important than anything." After getting married, Stella moved out of the base dormitory. Every day, she would either take the unified bus with her colleagues to and from work or be picked up and dropped off by Jasper. Soon, another major holiday arrived. On this day, the base arranged for a unified transport to a town further away for them to buy daily necessities not available in their small town. Stella, who hadn't slept well the night before, leaned on Jasper's shoulder to catch up on sleep. When she woke up, she stared out the window for a while before they finally arrived at the county town. The first thing Stella did was go to the post office to pick up a letter her colleagues from the Aerospace Institute in the capital had sent her. Then she and Jasper found a noodle shop to eat. While waiting for their noodles, Stella opened the letter and glanced at it, but she froze when she saw the contents. The letter was 2 pages long. The first page asked how she had been for the past 2 years. The second mentioned what had happened to the Vance family after she left. Somehow, the truth had come out. Ethan finally discovered Rhiannon's true colors, not only cutting ties with the Moon family, but also sending Rhiannon to prison. After that, he spent every day searching for her. As for her child, ever since she left, Evan cried and fussed every day, wanting to find her. Even sending him to daycare didn't help. About a year ago, the father and son were hit by a car driven by the recently released Rhiannon and ended up in the hospital. Only then did their search temporarily stop. Because Rhiannon had harmed a soldier and a soldier's dependent. This time, even with all the Moon family's connections, it was useless. Rhiannon was sentenced to 10 years in prison, after which she would be sent to a rural labor camp. As for the father and son, they still hadn't given up looking for her. Since the letters from the capital's Aerospace Institute were sent out collectively, her colleague didn't know exactly where she had been assigned. But she still warned her that Ethan was about to be transferred by the military. What if he was transferred to her base? So, she urged her to be careful. After reading the letter, Stella instantly lost her appetite. When she came to the Northwest base, she had intended to never see Ethan and his son again for the rest of her life. Everything she had done, the debt she had to repay, was finished. They owed each other nothing. Besides, she was married now. It would be a real hassle if they got entangled with her. Across from her, Jasper noticed she wasn't eating and asked with concern what was wrong. Stella bit her lip and handed him the letter. After reading it, Jasper also frowned but still comforted her. "Don't worry about this. I'll ask my friend about it." Disturbed by this news, neither of them was in the mood to shop anymore. After buying the necessities, they boarded the bus back to their town. Only after Stella had fallen into a deep sleep did Jasper get up and go to the living room to make a phone call. "Uncle Goo, do me a favor. A certain military district in the capital. Ethan, I'm afraid you won't be able to go to the Northwest this time." Ethan's eyelid twitched, and a sense of foreboding washed over him. Why? Ever since Stella was given to the country, he had been trying to find her. At first, he tried to go as a family member, but his application was rejected because he didn't have a marriage certificate. Later, because the child was so young and without a mother, someone in the higher-ups couldn't bear it and unintentionally let it slip. They didn't give a specific location, only that it was in the Northwest. There were several national project bases in the Northwest. Even if he had to search them one by one, it would take a long time. But it was better than nothing. So he reapplied for a transfer to the Northwest Military Region. Just when his application was finally approved, the organization summoned him to the office and regretfully informed him that he might not be able to go to the Northwest. Chapter 17. As for the reason, the organization was evasive. He could only return home, disappointed, to see Evan waiting obediently for him on the sofa. After 2 years, Evan had become much more mature, but his desire to see Stella was stronger than ever. So when he saw his father return, Evan rushed over excitedly. Daddy, when can we go to the Northwest to find Mommy?" Just as Ethan was struggling with how to answer, the phone suddenly rang. After listening to the person on the other end, Ethan's feelings were complicated. Ethan's father was dying. As the only heir, he had to be there for his father's final moments. And his father was at a base somewhere in the Northwest. This time, the organization had no reason to stop him from going. Soon, Ethan and Evan set off for the Northwest. After a 3-day, 3-night train journey, Ethan finally arrived in the northwestern city. As soon as he stepped out of the train station, he saw the car his father had sent to pick them up. The car bumped along a potholed road before finally reaching the Vance family home in the county town. Looking at the villa before him, Ethan's eyes were filled with complex emotions. More than not wanting to see his mother, he really didn't want to see his father. He had come here under a pretext, a chance to find Stella. What if he ran into her? So he didn't get out of the car. He just handed the gifts he had brought to the servant at the door and, ignoring the butler's protests, went to the other side of town to stay in a vacant house belonging to a comrade. Because he had given his comrade a heads-up, the servant at the house greeted him warmly. After a short rest, Ethan took his son for a walk around the county town, thinking of buying a gift for Stella. It was only then that he realized he knew nothing about her. When the clerk asked him what Stella liked, his mind was filled with things Rian liked. Finally, after much hesitation, he pointed to a corner of the glass counter. Late at night, after coaxing his son to sleep for a long time, Ethan looked up at the stars, his heart filled with a mix of emotions. Soon, he had already asked his comrade to help him search. It wouldn't be long before he could see Stella. On the second floor of the Knight family house in the small town, a room was still brightly lit. Jasper sat at his desk, listening to the person on the phone, his brow furrowed. Even after he hung up, his frown didn't relax. Until a knock on the door came, and Stella, wrapped in a coat, walked in. "Why are you still up so late?" Jasper took her hand and smiled. "I'm about to go to bed." Seeing that he had something to say, she sat down beside him. "What's wrong?" Jasper opened his mouth, then sighed lightly. "My friend said that Ethan and his son have come to the Northwest. They're staying in the county town now. On the surface, they're here to see his ailing father, but actually, they're here to find you, Stella." Stella knew his worries. The town was for the families of the base personnel. Without an order from above, outsiders couldn't get in. But that didn't mean they would never meet. The base sent a bus to the county town once a month. That was the only chance to buy things that weren't available in the small town. She couldn't just hide in the town forever because of Ethan and his son. "It's okay. What's meant to happen will happen. We'll deal with it when we see them. I have a clear conscience with them. Besides, we're married now. You'll protect me, right?" Jasper pulled her into his arms, his voice soft yet firm. "Yes, I will protect you." The next morning, Stella and Jasper boarded the bus to the county town. Seeing Jasper's constantly furrowed brow beside her, she smiled and reached out to smooth it. "Cheer up. It's not often we get to go to the county town. We can't let them ruin our mood." Jasper still couldn't cheer up, just holding her hand tightly without speaking. Chapter 18. After a 4 or 5 hour journey, the bus came to a steady stop at the county town bus station. Stella took Jasper's hand and they got off together. Just like last time, they first went to the post office to pick up the letter her colleague from the capital had sent, then to the department store to buy some necessities. Finally, laden with bags, they went to their usual noodle shop to eat. Before Stella could even pick up her chopsticks, a cry of surprise came from a distance. "Mommy!" Stella's hand, holding the chopsticks, froze. She instinctively wanted to duck her head, but it was too late. A figure rushed towards her. Fortunately, Jasper reacted quickly and blocked Evan. "Little boy, you must have the wrong person, don't you?" Although Jasper knew Stella had a son, he had never seen a photo of Evan. So when he saw the boy rush over calling Stella Mommy, he instinctively blocked him. Behind him, Stella looked at her son, whom she hadn't seen in 2 years, her eyes filled with complex emotions. After 2 years, Evan looked taller than before, and his eyes, as he looked at her, were filled with a sense of grievance. "Mommy!" Stella acted as if she didn't see him, focusing on eating the noodles in her bowl. Soon, another anxious voice called out from nearby. "Evan Vance, where are you?" Ethan had taken his son out for breakfast early in the morning. When he turned around after buying some buns, the boy had vanished in a flash. He quickly chased after him and found his son standing, stunned, in front of a noodle shop. He thought his son wanted noodles and was about to call the owner for 2 bowls when his gaze suddenly fell on a particular person. "That was Stella," Ethan murmured. After 2 years, Stella had changed so much. Her former 2 braids were now a shoulder-length bob, and she was a bit tanner. The only thing that hadn't changed was her bright eyes, but they no longer held the love for him that they once did. Stella showed no reaction upon seeing Ethan. She didn't even look at him. After wiping her mouth with a napkin, she was about to take Jasper's hand and leave. "Stella, Mommy!" Both father and son instinctively moved to chase her, but Jasper quickly blocked them. "Sorry, my wife and I have to catch our bus back. Let's talk some other time." Without waiting for them to react, he took Stella's hand and walked away. It wasn't until their figures had completely disappeared from sight that Evan finally burst into tears. "Daddy, does Mommy not want me anymore?" Ethan finally snapped back to reality and quickly picked up the child to comfort him. "SHH, Mommy doesn't not want you. She's just—" Ethan couldn't even finish the sentence himself. His mind was filled with the 2 words Jasper had just said, "my wife." Stella was married? Why? Didn't she love him so much? Why would she marry someone else? Even if she didn't want him anymore, did she not even want the child she had carried for 10 months? Late at night, Ethan held the phone, unable to come to his senses for a long time. His friend on the other end was still sighing. "Look at you. When Stella loved you, you didn't cherish her. Now that she's married, you're starting to regret it. I'm telling you, don't be impulsive. Her marriage is protected by the state. If you do something reckless, no one can save you." Ethan opened his mouth, still feeling unwilling. He had originally asked his friend at the marriage registry to check Stella's marital status, but he never expected that she was really married. "You said I didn't cherish her before. Did she marry out of spite to get back at me? If I..." Chapter 19, before Ethan could finish, his friend on the other end was so angry he was about to hang up. Who would go to such lengths just to spite you? Her marriage had to go through layers of approval, and their work is special. Once they're married, they're not allowed to divorce. Who would try to spite you like that? Without waiting for Ethan's reply, the friend hung up, leaving Ethan standing blankly by the phone, his hand gripping the receiver tightly. Even though the truth was laid out before him time and again by different people, he still couldn't accept the fact that Stella was married, nor could he accept that she no longer loved him. If she really didn't love him, why would she have had a child with him after marrying him? He had to find her and get a clear answer. Finally, at a friend's wedding, Ethan saw Stella again. He wanted to have a proper talk with her, but Stella was inexplicably annoyed. What was there to talk about? Stella had wanted to talk to him properly before, but he had repeatedly put her off to see Rian. Now that he wanted to talk, she no longer had the patience. So Stella clung to Jasper's arm, chatting with friends all over the venue, and didn't spare Ethan or his son a single glance until the wedding was over. As they were waiting for a car outside, an accident happened. Someone who had had too much to drink mistook the accelerator for the brake and drove straight into the crowd at the entrance. "Stella! Stella!" someone shouted her name. By the time Stella reacted, she was already being held tightly in Jasper's arms, shielded by his body. It was only then that a sharp pain shot through her. She frantically touched the man on top of her, her voice trembling with a hint of a sob. "Yeah, Jasper, are you okay?" Jasper finally helped her up, checked her from head to toe, and then shook his head. "I'm fine." But Stella was still worried and insisted on taking him to the hospital for a checkup. As she turned, her pupils suddenly contracted. Although he had dodged in time, Ethan's arm was still injured. Blood stained his entire sleeve. In his arms, Evan was crying nonstop from the shock. "Stella." Ethan instinctively looked at her, pleading with his eyes for her to come and comfort the frightened child. But just as he and his son had left her behind in that car accident years ago, Stella quickly averted her gaze and pulled Jasper onto a nearby ambulance. The hopeful light in Ethan's eyes instantly dimmed, and a bitter smile touched his lips. At the hospital, even though the doctor said Jasper only had minor scrapes, Stella was still worried and insisted he stay overnight. Jasper looked at her helplessly. "I'm really fine, let's go home." "No," Stella shook her head stubbornly. "How can that huge scrape on your back be called a minor injury?" With that, she picked up a lunch box. "You rest well. I'll go get you something to eat." Only after Jasper nodded obediently did she leave the room, nearly bumping into Ethan right outside. Stella didn't even pause, trying to walk around him, but a force from behind stopped her, making it impossible to move. "Let go, you're hurting me," she glared at the large hand on her wrist, her face showing her displeasure. Ethan instinctively let go, seeing the red mark on her wrist, a pang of guilt rising in his throat. "Stella, can we talk?" She had been rubbing her sore wrist. Hearing his words, she paused for a moment. "What is there for us to talk about? When I wanted to talk to you before, you didn't have the patience to listen. Why do you think I have the patience to listen to you now?" Chapter 20. Ethan was speechless. His hand, hanging by his side, slowly clenched into a fist. The words he had rehearsed in his mind countless times failed to come out. Stella was right. When Rhiannon came back to him, she did have something to say, but at that time, his mind was consumed with worry about Rhiannon's sprained ankle, and he had no patience to listen to her. Now, why should she be willing to listen to him? Seeing him like this, Stella felt an even greater sense of irony. "Besides, we were never husband and wife from the start. I have no obligation to listen to your idle chatter here." This sentence was like a heavy hammer striking his heart. Although he knew they hadn't gotten their license, hearing her say it out loud made it hard for him to breathe. "Even if we weren't husband and wife, what about the child? After all, you carried him for 10 months. As his mother, can't you go see him? Do you know how much the child has missed you these past 2 years?" His words carried a hint of blame. Even if Stella held a grudge against him, the child was innocent. How could she be so heartless as to just leave? As if hearing a joke, Stella suddenly laughed. "The child is innocent. Ethan, have you forgotten how the child framed me, how he lied to your face? Yes, he is a child, but under your upbringing, he has already been led astray." Stella's voice was laced with exhaustion. When she first discovered Evan was lying to her, she had tried to correct him. But before she could act, Evan would throw himself into Ethan's arms, saying he wanted to find Rhiannon. She never had a chance. Even if she tried to intervene, Ethan would use the excuse that the child was still young and she shouldn't make things difficult for him. "The fact that you, the child, and I have come to this point, you know better than I do whose fault it is." Since they were already at this point, Stella decided to say everything clearly. "And isn't my leaving what you wanted? You can get back together with Rhiannon, build a new family. That child can call her mommy. Aren't you happy?" Hearing her words, Ethan's pupils trembled, and he felt as if his breath was being choked off. "You want to push me onto someone else that badly?" Stella shook her head. "It's not pushing. You belonged to Rhiannon from the start. Your mother saved my life and asked me to give you a home, but she never said who the mistress of that home had to be. It could have been me, and it could have been Rhiannon. Besides, you always had her on your mind. Now that you and she can be a family, isn't that good?" Every word was like a flame searing Ethan's heart, causing an explosion of pain. Helplessness began to churn, fueling his unwillingness to accept it. Ethan took a deep breath and explained, "There's no possibility between me and Rhiannon. I sent her to prison for her crimes a long time ago. My wife can only be you. I've been looking for you for the past 2 years. Why didn't you wait for me? Why did you marry someone else?" Remembering what Jasper had said, he couldn't help but take a step forward. "Stella, as long as you divorce him, we can go back to how things were before, okay?" In his mind, Stella should still be in love with him. If she had married him only to repay a debt, she wouldn't have had a child with him, nor would she have continued to live with him for 5 years after the child was born. Although she had married someone else out of anger, he had deeply realized his mistakes. She should give him a chance. And since fate had brought him to the Northwest to meet her again, wasn't that proof that they still had a chance? Chapter 21. For the first time, Stella couldn't understand the man in front of her. "If there's something wrong with your brain, you should go get it checked again." A sharp voice came from behind them, and the next moment, Ethan was punched and sent sprawling to the ground. Stella looked up sharply and saw Jasper glaring at the man on the floor with a fierce expression. Having been with Jasper for so long, this was the first time she had ever seen him so angry. She quickly ran over, checking his injuries while asking with concern, "Why did you come out?" Jasper wrapped his arm around her waist and looked coldly at the man on the ground. "If I hadn't come out, you were about to be stolen away. Captain Vance, interfering with a marriage is a crime that can land you in jail." Ethan struggled to his feet, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. "What do you mean, interfering? Stella was my wife to begin with." Stella frowned and said, word by word, "Ethan, I never got a license with you. We have no relationship. I am now Jasper's wife. If you insist on saying we were once husband and wife, then I'd like to ask you, in those 5 years, did you ever fulfill your duties as a husband? And you say I should go see Evan as his mother, but have you forgotten? We never got our license, and I was never added to your family's household registration. So legally, he has nothing to do with me. You two are the family." Ethan clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "But you gave birth to him. How can you not be his mother? How can you not be part of our family?" Stella let out a soft laugh, her eyes full of sarcasm as she looked at him. "And did Evan ever treat me as his mother? Who was it that framed me for poisoning him for Rhiannon's sake? Who was it that constantly cried about wanting to find Rhiannon? Ethan, don't you think you sound ridiculous saying these things? Perhaps at the very beginning, the child did see me as his mother. But that was all because you were good to me, and he was just copying you. Now that you're good to Rhiannon, he follows you in relying on her. He sees you as his father, but he has never seen me as his mother. In the 5 years she took care of Evan, she had diligently fulfilled her duties as a mother. But it seemed Evan never really needed her maternal love. She squeezed Jasper's hand again. Jasper is my husband, my family." Her gaze, when she looked at Jasper, softened and shone with a gentle light. "He doesn't set off fireworks to make me happy or say sweet nothings to amuse me. Instead, every time I get off a late shift, he's always there to ride me home on his bike. When I have no appetite, he goes out of his way to learn from others how to make porridge for me. Some things, some words, I might say them casually, but he remembers every single one, silently getting them done or making them happen. He remembers what I like and brings me things I enjoy. When I'm sad, he sits with me in silence. His love for me is open and honest. When other female colleagues pursue him, he politely refuses them, saying I'm the one he likes. He never hides our relationship. When I face difficulties, he doesn't tell me to give up or let someone else have the opportunity. Instead, he encourages me to work hard and improve alongside him. Whenever I look back, he is always right there behind me. These are all things you never did." Stella spoke in fits and starts, saying a great deal. She had always thought her understanding of Jasper was superficial, but at this moment, she knew she understood him better than she had imagined. Jasper had quietly seeped into every aspect of her life. Whatever she said or did, there was always a trace of him. As Ethan listened to her words, his mind flashed with memories of his own past with Stella. He tried to compare those memories with the things Jasper did, only to find with bitter sadness that there was no comparison. In their 5 years of marriage, he had been the one abandoning her, and she had been the one accommodating him. He had never once considered her feelings. When they got married, he didn't want a big celebration, so she quietly crossed off pages of guests from the list. When the doctor said Stella's health was poor and she couldn't have children, he had simply said he wanted a child, and she had taken months of bitter medicine to successfully conceive. After Rhiannon appeared, he had given all his attention to her, even saving her first in the car accident. And Stella, from the beginning of the accident to the end, he had never even thought of her. His love for Stella was pitifully small. Perhaps it had never existed at all. Chapter 22, Stella seemed not to see the look of utter devastation in Ethan's eyes. She just continued saying what she needed to say. "Ethan, the fact that we never got our marriage license back then was a sign that this marriage was never meant to last. Your mother saved my life, and I repaid that debt by giving you a home and an heir. We are even. It's better for us to go our separate ways and live our own lives. As for Evan, I have no obligation to continue caring for him. After all, he doesn't like me as his mother. He was just used to my accommodation and care. Anyone else could take care of him just the same." With that, she glanced at the pale-faced man. "I've said all I need to say. Don't come looking for me again." Then, without another look at him, she took Jasper's hand and turned to leave, leaving Ethan frozen in place, watching their retreating backs motionless. A long, long time passed. The pain from the cut on his face began to spread, and a sour ache rose in his throat. He wanted to call out to her, but he knew it was impossible. Perhaps Stella had once truly loved him, but he had never thought to cherish it. When she first left, he hadn't even cared, always thinking she loved him too much, that she couldn't leave him, that he could just coax her a little and it would be fine. Today, he finally understood. There was no possibility between him and Stella anymore. When she said those words, Stella had been calm from beginning to end, not angry, not furious. She looked at him as if he were a stranger. Late at night, Ethan sat numbly at his desk, looking at the few remaining photos of him and Stella. When Stella left the Vance home, she had thrown all these things into the trash. It was a sanitation worker who, recognizing his face in the photos, thought they might be important and brought them back to him. And these few photos were the last connection between him and Stella. These pictures were taken when they had just started dating. She had pulled him along to have them taken, her eyes full of love, saying that since they were a couple, they had to take some photos as mementos. At the time, he hadn't cared, thinking they were just a few photos and they could always take more later. But in their 5 years of marriage, this was the only time they had taken photos together. Even after their son was born, they had each held the child and taken separate pictures. In the photo, Stella wore 2 braids, her face filled with a shy, happy smile. And he, beside her, had a cold expression. What was he thinking back then? He touched his own face in the photo. He seemed to have been angry about something related to Rian, so he had worn that expression the whole time, so much so that the photographer's repeated reminders had been useless. Ethan put down the photo and slumped back in his chair, staring at the harsh light, a hoarse sob escaping his throat. It was wrong. It was all wrong from the very beginning. Ethan covered his eyes with his hand and whispered raggedly. A few days later, Stella received news that Ethan and his son had left. After his father passed away, Ethan did not stay in the Northwest as per his father's will, but chose to return directly to the capital. Before leaving, he and his son had someone send some things to the town where she lived. In a small box lay a lady's watch. It was a style she liked and the right size for her. But she didn't like it. In the end, Stella placed the watch in a forgotten corner. Soon, Stella composed herself and threw herself wholeheartedly into her research. Finally, her and her colleagues' efforts paid off. The research was complete. She and Jasper earned the opportunity to visit their families back in the coastal city. Chapter 23, when Stella and Jasper got married, she had spoken to his family on the phone, but this was the first time they would meet in person. So, from getting off the train to getting into the car, Stella was exceptionally nervous, her hands twisting together nonstop. Jasper comforted her. "Don't worry, my family is very nice, and I'm here, no one will bully you." As it turned out, Jasper's family was indeed very good to her. The meals they cooked were to her taste, and the gifts they gave were things she truly liked. And to avoid disturbing the young couple, the Knight family had bought them a small villa. For the next week, Jasper took Stella to see all the sights of the large coastal city. As she came out of the library, she saw Jasper being stopped by a girl in a white dress. The girl said something, and Jasper's face darkened. She quickly walked over and tugged on Jasper's sleeve. "What's wrong?" Jasper's expression softened when he saw her. He looked at the girl in front of him and said sternly, "Serena, I've already made it very clear. I don't like you. I am married now. Stella is my wife." Those few words were enough for Stella to understand their relationship. She looked at Serena, and just as she was about to say something, Jasper pulled her into the car. On the way home, Jasper finally let go of his cold demeanor and explained. "Serena is the orphaned daughter of my uncle's comrade in arms. My uncle adopted her when she was a child. My mother also felt sorry for her, so she asked me to take extra care of her. But she mistook that care for romantic interest and suddenly confessed to me in front of the whole family. That confession had made the whole family very uncomfortable. Even Jasper's mother, a usually gentle woman, had become stern. At first, everyone thought Jasper had done something to make Serena say such outrageous things. But after a careful investigation, they found it was all Serena's own one-sided idea. To put an end to Serena's feelings, Jasper had tried reasoning and scolding, but she still loved him. In the end, Jasper had no choice but to apply for a transfer to the Northwest, which had briefly put a stop to her obsession. He never expected that as soon as he returned for a visit, Serena would pop up out of nowhere to block his path and confess to him again. By the end of his explanation, his voice was filled with helplessness. Stella patted his hand reassuringly, not taking Serena too seriously. She trusted Jasper to handle it, but they didn't expect that as soon as they returned to the Knight family's main house, an angry voice would come from inside the villa. "You, surnamed Thorn, I know you feel sorry for your comrade's orphan, but no matter how sorry you feel, don't you dare trade my son's happiness for it." The two exchanged a look and quickly entered the villa. They saw that the inside was a mess. Serena's uncle stood to the side, his face flushed. Serena herself had lost the arrogant demeanor she had when she saw them earlier that day. Across from them, Jasper's mother had swept everything off the table, and Jasper's father was looking at the uncle with a grim face. The butler hurried over to greet them, explaining what had happened as he did. In the years Jasper had been away, Serena's feelings for him hadn't diminished, they had intensified. She had even developed depression and would cause a scene from time to time. Her uncle, heartbroken, had come to see Jasper's mother as soon as they returned. His words, both direct and indirect, were all about asking Jasper's mother to persuade Jasper to divorce Stella and marry Serena instead. Hearing this, Jasper's face turned ugly. He looked straight at his uncle and Serena. "Uncle, this is the last time I will call you that. My marriage to Stella is a military marriage, protected by the state. What you are doing is attempting to sabotage a military marriage. If you want Serena to go to jail, you can try. Of course, it's impossible for you to take her place." Chapter 24, hearing this, the uncle's face changed. After raising Serena for so many years, he naturally couldn't bear to see her go to jail. Before proposing this idea, he had even considered going to jail himself. But Jasper's words had bluntly shattered that fantasy. How could Serena go to jail? Beside him, Serena's face also turned pale. She looked at the man she had loved for over a decade, her heart filled with resentment and unwillingness. How could he treat her like this? She loved him so much, yet not only did he marry someone else, he also wanted to send her to jail. Serena shot up from her seat, her tear-streaked face looking at him. "Jasper, from the first moment I saw you, I fell in love with you. How can you do this to me? Can't you just give me a chance? I'm even willing to be your mistress." Slap! The answer she received was a sharp slap from Stella. Stella's eyes were cold. She knew about Serena's feelings for Jasper, but she didn't know they were so obsessive that she would be willing to be a mistress. This wasn't love, it was self-degradation. "Serena, do you know what happened to the last woman who did something like this? And do you know what happened to the last man who had someone on the side? The woman is in prison now. Not only is she being bullied by the other inmates, but after her release, she'll be sent to a rural labor camp. The man not only lost his wife and child, but also received severe punishment for moral misconduct, implicating a whole series of people. You come from a privileged background and have received a good education. How can you have such depraved thoughts? There are plenty of good men in the world. You could go out and see for yourself. If you really did this, have you thought about the serious consequences Jasper would face? Have you thought about the Knight family, about your adoptive father? Do you have any idea how many people your selfishness has harmed? Why do you think Jasper went to the Northwest? With his education and family background, he could have gone to the capital and made a great career for himself. But because of you, he could only go to the Northwest. You're used to being pampered. Could you endure the hardships of the Northwest? Do you really love him, or are you trying to ruin him?" The more Stella spoke, the angrier she became, until her body trembled. Jasper quickly pulled her into his arms and looked coldly at Serena. "I made everything clear a long time ago. My kindness to you was solely because of my mother's request, and in all that care, I never did anything to give you the wrong idea. The gifts I gave you were also given to my other cousins and female classmates, things that were helpful for studies, things anyone could have." Serena's face grew paler and paler, and the slap mark on her cheek began to burn. She could no longer hear what they were saying. Her eyes rolled back, and she fainted. The Knight house descended into chaos again as they rushed her to the hospital. Looking at the person lying in the hospital bed with her eyes closed, Jasper's mother sighed deeply, then looked at Stella with heartache. "My child, you've been wronged." Stella shook her head. "It's all right, Mom." Jasper's mother turned back to look at Serena in the hospital room, her eyes filled with complex emotions. "It's all my fault. Serena's mother was a good friend of mine when we were young, and her father was my brother's comrade in arms. Because of this connection, I wanted to take extra care of her and told Jasper to look after this little sister." Who knew she would misunderstand, thinking Jasper liked her? When she first confessed, we thought we hadn't raised her well and considered sending her abroad to see the world, thinking it would make her give up. But she thought we were abandoning her and refused to go. The more Jasper's mother spoke, the more upset she became. Stella understood her dilemma. It was precisely because of this relationship between her and Serena's parents that she couldn't bring herself to do anything to hurt Serena. That's why she felt so guilty towards Stella, for letting her suffer such a grievance on her first visit to the Knight family. Seeing her mother-in-law's difficult position, Stella was about to say something, but Jasper held her and shook his head. It wasn't until they left the hospital that Jasper explained. "Serena is very stubborn right now. No one can persuade her. I think our only option is to return to the Northwest early." Stella nodded. "That's probably for the best." Chapter 25, when she had spoken to Serena earlier, she had seen a flash of fear in her eyes. No matter how much Serena loved Jasper, she was still afraid of the state, afraid of going to jail. But because of their guilt, Serena's uncle and Jasper's mother hadn't sent her to prison, nor would they allow anyone else to. If they had been firm from the start, Serena might have given up on Jasper long ago. But because of the previous generation's relationship, they couldn't bring themselves to do it. And as the younger generation, she and Jasper couldn't do it either. If they couldn't solve the problem, they had to avoid it. Jasper held her, his heart aching. "I'm sorry you had to go through this." He had tried to be firm and send Serena abroad before, but his mother had thrown a fit, crying and making a scene, and the matter was dropped. It wasn't that his mother didn't love them. It was that because of her relationship with the previous generation, she was more biased towards Serena. Plus, Serena had been an orphan from a young age, which made her even more sympathetic. Stella didn't want to get involved in their affairs. After all, she was just the daughter-in-law. As long as Jasper loved her, that was enough. She couldn't be bothered with the rest. Her outburst at Serena had been because Serena had said hurtful things about Jasper. With this thought, neither of them was in the mood to shop anymore. They quickly went home, packed their bags, and left a letter, planning to leave in a hurry. But before they could leave, the phone in the living room suddenly rang. The housekeeper's anxious voice came from the other end. Serena was awake, but because she hadn't seen Jasper, she was threatening to commit suicide. Normally, Jasper's mother would have given in and called Jasper to the hospital. But now, Jasper was finally married to a good woman. If he divorced because of Serena, she would fail as a mother. In the past, Jasper's mother had indeed been good to Serena because of Serena's mother. She had even been better to her than to her own son, Jasper. But now, her son was married and might have grandchildren in the future. Naturally, her son and daughter-in-law became more important. After all, they were her own flesh and blood. So, when Serena cried and demanded to see Jasper again, his mother slapped her across the face. Serena clutched her swollen cheek, looking at Jasper's mother in disbelief. After her own parents passed away and her adoptive uncle, Jasper's mother had been the kindest person to her. Now, she had slapped her. Jasper's mother looked at her, her eyes devoid of their former gentleness. "Serena, for all these years, I believe I have treated you well, but you have repeatedly tried to destroy my son's family and career. As a mother, I can no longer tolerate it. So, once you recover, I will send you abroad to study. I will also arrange for servants to go with you. Furthermore, you are not to return to this country without my permission. This is the greatest mercy I can show you. Otherwise, you would be in a rural labor camp right now." Without waiting for Serena's reaction, she turned and left. And this time, Serena's uncle also hardened his heart and decided to go abroad with her. "After all, I've raised her for so many years. I can't rest easy letting her go abroad alone." In the Knight family's main house, the uncle sat on the sofa, sighing, and apologized to Stella and Jasper. "I was muddle-headed last time. I'm truly sorry. Although Serena was his adopted daughter, after so many years, he saw her as his own. As a father, it was natural to love his daughter, but when that love harmed Stella and Jasper's relationship, Stella still felt a barrier in her heart. So she subconsciously looked at Jasper beside her. Chapter 26, Jasper held her hand and glossed over the matter with a few words, but he didn't indicate that they were completely fine with it. So on the day Serena left for abroad, Stella and Jasper did not go downstairs to see her off. They just stood by the window on the second floor, watching the scene below through the curtains. Perhaps his mother's slap had worked, knocking some sense into Serena. She no longer had her previous arrogance, just stood silently to the side. Just before getting into the car, Jasper's mother handed her an envelope. She said something to her, and Serena suddenly looked up at the second-floor window before lowering her head and getting into the car. Watching the car disappear, Stella finally looked away and up at him. Jasper looked back at her with mutual understanding. "Let's go. It's time for us to head back to the Northwest." Compared to the anxiety and panic of their arrival, the journey back to the Northwest felt incredibly relaxing for both of them. After all, the Northwest held their careers, their dreams, and their home. What should have been a wonderful family visit had been turned into a mess by Serena's actions. Jasper's mother felt even more guilty and stuffed their luggage with many things. "That's enough, Mom. We already have plenty." Stella tried to stop her, but her mother-in-law dodged her hand and continued to pack the suitcase. "How is this enough? It's always better to bring more." For their last dinner before parting, Jasper's mother personally cooked Stella and Jasper's favorite dishes. Even Jasper's father, who was usually busy at the base, took special leave to come back. The meal was filled with reluctance to part. In the end, Jasper's father took out his treasured liquor and had a few drinks with his son. Late at night, Stella sat on a chair on the balcony, keeping Jasper company as he sobered up. They chatted idly. Perhaps because of the alcohol, the usually taciturn Jasper talked a lot, even sharing a few amusing stories from his childhood. The short stories painted a picture of a wonderful childhood, making Stella feel envious. Jasper took her hand and smiled gently. "Although my childhood was wonderful, I'm even luckier to have met you as an adult and built a family with you. Stella, thank you." Stella rested her head on his shoulder, looking at the stars. "I should be the one thanking you." During her initial period in the Northwest, she had been lost. Although she had come to the Northwest resolutely to pursue her dream, what else could she do beyond that? Her previous, imperfect marriage had made her somewhat withdrawn, and for a long time, she had been a loner. It wasn't until Jasper took the initiative to talk to her, to show her a new world and a new life, that she truly came alive again. It was because of this help that she gradually noticed Jasper and developed feelings for him. Under his persistent love and pursuit, she slowly opened her heart to him. The two of them leaned against each other like this, under the faint starlight, talking for a long, long time. The day they headed back to the Northwest was a beautiful day. The platform was filled with people seeing them off. Jasper's parents looked at the two of them sitting by the window with reluctance, constantly reminding them to be safe. They said they would go to the Northwest to see them once they finished their work. The train whistled, puffing black smoke as it moved forward. Stella and Jasper held hands tightly, their eyes full of hope for their future life. The future would definitely be better. It wasn't until the train had completely disappeared from sight that Jasper's parents reluctantly left the platform. Meanwhile, on another train heading to the capital, Ethan finally averted his gaze. "Daddy, is Mommy never coming back?" Evan sat obediently beside him, his eyes full of reluctance. Since seeing his mother in the Northwest, Evan finally understood that she was not coming back. And under his father's guidance and the housekeeper's persuasion, he had also come to deeply understand his past mistakes. So later, he had written several letters of apology to Stella. Ethan stroked his head and said gently, "Mommy has her own life and career. Whether she comes back or not is her own decision. The only thing we can do is pray for her safety and well-being. And we should go back to the capital and continue with our own lives." As the whistle blew, the train to the capital slowly began to move forward. Ethan took one last look at the platform, closed his eyes, and thought to himself, "Stella, I wish you a lifetime of peace, safety, and happiness."